It's an interesting thing. It might be slightly radioactive, right? But gradually, the carbon sink is absorbing that. We're going to talk a lot about carbon. Carbon is your sponge. It is the sponge of all pollution. If you want to suck this up, you need more carbon. Where's that come from? What creates carbon? Ecosystems, majoring in trees. And number one in the hit parade is kind of up here in proportion. And we don't see it, and we even talk about it in bad ways, and that's dirt, that's soil, erosion. And where do you get this from? Where do you run out of soil? What do? Go and cut down more forest. What makes soil? Where do you find good soil out there under the forest? And if you're talking about an area like this, what forest are you talking about? It's gone. It's been gone a long time. There's no more forest left. People are watching it with satellite. It got you on Google Earth. And when we know about the oil palm, we're personally involved in sustainable oil palm development right now. And it's major. It's massive. But a lot of people don't see it because you're not on a tractor. You're not on the field. You're not out there. There's nobody out there. They're sitting in an air-conditioned tractor listening to the internet. They're following instructions on chemical packets. It's usually coming in on the laptop. You know, there's nobody out there touching the soil much. En masse. Area, you know, in relationship to food supply. So you know your average is 200 tons an acre a year on all the major crops in the world. You can easily go to 400 tons. Wheat can go to 400 tons quite easy an acre a year. Wheat, soybeans, maize. What are they? What are those main crops? There's only 5. Rice, wheat, soy, maize, potatoes. Those are the only crops on the stock market. In 1950 there was 12. Wheat will probably come off. Wheat will probably come off. Because China can eat the world's wheat supply 3 times every year. And the economists think that's a good idea. The economists think the world's never been in a better state. Yeah? Because there's never been more money around and more potential to make money. So from the economist's point of view, we're in paradise. We're in heaven. I mean, something that's completely flawed. Yeah. But we don't look at this. And this is not improving. This is getting worse, this figure. Now we don't do that. We don't do that. And the smaller the farm, the less you do that. Because the less you can afford to do it. So your farm in France there, it wouldn't have any soil erosion.
Well, there is soil erosion in France.
No, in France.
But not in the farm we are talking about.
No.
No. Because
on a lot of climates, you can afford to lose 4 to 6 tons of soil a year and replenish it. Surprisingly. An acre. But on farms like that one and the great productive farms in the world that have been researched and small gardens, when you get into an urban garden, you can put 25 millimeters of soil on every year, easy. Easy. You can gain an inch of soil every year. If you want to go for it, you can put 50 mil of soil, 2 inches, every year on an urban garden. That's not a problem. Not a problem, not easy to do. Because you can overpower it.
How much did you reach here in the soil?
Well, it wouldn't be much, but I would have put a few hundred cubic meters of compost on here. I must have made 100 compost. Easy. Apart from hundreds of tons of mulches coming. I haven't never had the economy to measure. You know. I said to Angelo Eckelades of Deep Green Permaculture, I referenced Deep Green Permaculture. I made a video about his garden in Melbourne. It's only 60 square meters. And he's recorded every single gram of production. He has 30 fruit trees that he prunes 4 times a year. He does this double pruning method to get them crowded for great diversity. He has like 80 different types of vegetables and herbs. He has a large berry crop in it. It's 60 square meters. And he's a pharmacologist by trade. But I asked him, Angelo, how long do you spend in the garden a week now? He said 2 hours a week. Doesn't sound like much, does it?
So about the work don't stop. If you have life in the soil, if you have trees working for you, the work don't stop.
Well, actually, if you look at 9 of those squares there, a little bit more than 9 of those squares, that's about a square meter. And if you stand there and stare at it for 2 minutes, that's how long he's got every week to stare at every square meter. So if you divide 120 by 60, you've got 2 minutes a square meter a week to get it right. That's quite a lot of time. That's quite a lot of attention. If you want to stare at that for 2 minutes and imagine what you've got in there and whether you can sort out what needs to be done. It's actually a lot of attention. As soon as you move to an acre, you've got 4,000 square meters. 10,000 square meters in a hectare. You haven't got any minutes now for each square meter. You only got a few seconds in a working week. So you've got to partner up with ecosystems. Only in the small area, only in zone 1, and we're going to talk about zones, are you actually the teacher. Are you in complete control? Only in zone 1 are you the total designer. Only zone 1 does not exist in nature. Only zone 1 is complete human landscape. You designed the whole thing, you're controlling the whole thing in zone 1. As soon as you go to the next zone, you're relying on nature to quite some extent. And the larger zone out, even more. And the larger zone, forestry on the outside of that, even more. And when you get to zone 5, you're only a visitor. You're just a learner. You're going out there to learn. You're going out there to be taught. You're going out there as a visitor. You're going out for experience. And it's quite an interesting way to think when you're designing. And hence the production is so high when you get in small areas. And we do that on all design. So if you just want to think about what society would be like with so much production in small area, close to where we experience it, and how meaningful our work would be, and how returning all our waste to that same production means we conserve our waste. We think carefully about what we trash, what we do with our manure, what we do with our wastewater, and how we understand that from little babies up to, elderly people. How secure would you feel? Understanding that that's all around you all the time, everywhere, and everybody's doing it, and everybody understands it. And outside of that are the larger main crops that are either processed or stored. And outside of that is rangeland and forestry. Animals, we can walk them into town. Animals, we can walk into town to process, or we can walk them close to town to process. You can't walk crops in. No matter what you do, you won't get the fruit to pick itself and walk into town. Right? You won't get the crops to jump out the ground and walk to town. They won't do it. Animals will do it. Right? We can range them in. And forest is so long term and so permanent. When we go out to harvest forest, we're talking about very, very long term yield. It doesn't matter if you put a bit of effort into something that's like 50-year product that's going to last hundreds of years when we process it. when we're talking about forestry product. You know, that's a different world. That's a different society. That's a society that doesn't have anywhere near the same amount of trauma and stress and anguish. It took me 8 years to learn to teach. It took me 8 years to get confidence to teach. I took this course in 1983. That's 33 years ago. I first got involved in permaculture in 1980. That's 36 years ago. That's more than half my life. I'm 62 this year. I'm 61 now. It took me 8 years to build up confidence to teach. I couldn't go and see a swale when I finished my course. I didn't know where there was any swales. There was a 5-year-old food forest near where I lived. I lived near the largest permaculture group in the world. I just happened to live near Nambour, which was at that time, 1983, was the largest permaculture group in the world, 150 members, that's all. In 1991, I decided I just had enough. I took my course in 1983 with Bill. I thought this would be international policy by 1990. I thought the whole world would be doing permaculture. That this makes such common sense to me. I was so naive. And that everybody's going to do this. Why do I have to bother? They're all going to do it. You know, of course they are. The world's, you know, got so many problems. 83, I'm thinking the world's got so many problems. And Bill talked about so many issues that have come true now. It sounded really radical. I didn't believe it. I thought he was madman. It was crazy. I didn't think anybody could remember so many facts, figures, numbers, names of books, authors, telephone numbers, zip codes. I mean, the guy's head just fell out with facts. They were just falling all over you. I said, it's not possible that anybody could remember all this. And he just rattled out so many improbable truths. So many things that were just weird. That can't be true. He loves doing that. He loves telling you things that you can't believe are true. And then I went and checked it all out, one by one. I realised they were all true. He went on and on about neem. No one knew anything about neem. No one knew anything about adadraxin oil and neem. You know, the neem tree, Brominium. Nobody knew anything about that then. And he said it was related to the white cedar, which has adadraxin in its species name. He said it had the same oil in it. Everybody said that was wrong. He was right. He said the Americans proposed to let a nuclear bomb off on the corona of the moon to scare the Russians. I said, nah, they didn't, did they? They did. It's true. There was a proposal to do that. They were worried it might knock it out of orbit a bit, which would kind of cause a few problems. There was crazy stuff like that. So when I realised that it was all true, I decided to pay close attention. I started to really sort of pay close attention to what Bill said, even though it might sound crazy. And all the words he used in this book, including the titles, I decided to pay close attention to them. And I asked Bill, how do I know I can teach? How do I know I'm doing a good job? I don't want to compromise with the other system anymore. I'm over it. I'm stepping out. I don't care if I starve. I'm not compromising with the other system. I've been a successful self-made businessman, but I'm over it. I'm over compromising. And he just said, well, if you're a good teacher, your students become active. And if you're a good teacher, within 350 to 400 students, by the time you get to 350 to 400 students, you will have produced a teacher, a PDC teacher. So that was my goal. I said, how do I know if I'm doing the right thing and working in permaculture? He said, if you're doing the right thing, resources keep gathering around you. And most of them will be people. That's all he said. It was dead simple. So I went out and started teaching. I produced a teacher within 125 students. And it's been coming downhill since then. Faster and faster and faster and faster. It took me 8 years to teach. Some people start teaching within the first year. Now, because you gain experience so fast, how many YouTubes do you want to watch? How many Google Earths do you want to see? I mean, we could show you live permaculture. But it's just masses of information out there. So, you know, we are speeding up these processes. Are we speeding up fast enough? Has been the big thing. Can we get people to realise what's possible? How quick can we do it? That's what we encourage you to do. As you can talk and talk and talk, and people don't get it. They have to see it. They'll see it online as well, but nothing beats seeing it live. Here, I taught, I don't know how many years I taught people about reed beds. I don't know how long it took. Eventually we put a shower block in. Eventually I built a reed bed. It leaked. They didn't take me seriously. It failed. I redug it out. I had to reseal it again. I didn't have enough people. I didn't have enough water. Eventually, I got the reed bed working with a big course. It's going to come back to life with you guys showering. Don't worry about showering. Your shower water is going on a fruit tree after it's gone through the reed bed. I can still remember the day that I got that reed bed full, and I've just got hoses up in the air so they flood. As soon as we see the water at the surface, we tip the hose and water trees. I still remember the day that I got it full, the reeds were green, and I got Ampty, my mother-in-law, and I said, Ampty, come and look at this. And I put the water down like that, and perfectly clean water came out. It looked clean. It almost looks like you drink it. Don't drink it. It's not that clean, but it bloody looks clean. It doesn't smell. And Hyle, she called Hyle. I said, look. And I said, she said, how many fruit trees? I said, I don't know. Start. And we put a hose on it. We got 15 fruit trees watered from one day sharing from a group like you. Of course we did. And she just went, she turned around to me, and Hyle said, wow, why didn't you tell us about this before? It's been 10 years I've been telling you this.
Which language you have to use? Which language?
Shit! No, we got people running businesses putting them in. People are putting them in all through the range, up near Salt. People are putting them in as jobs. They're putting the water into tanks and using it later, which I wouldn't do, but we put it straight on. It's crazy. You know, sometimes you just got to show people. You just got to do it. You know? So it's very interesting where we end up. I don't think we can fully imagine how abundant the world will be and how much wilderness then there is to manage the climate. How much wilderness we can just let go. And if we like, we can go out there and repair it like John D. Loon wants to do. We can actually go out and do it if we've got enough time and effort. We can actually go out and repair. Or we can just let it go. It'll come back on its own. Some areas will need some repair. And you have to ask, what happens to those farmers that are out there in the middle of nowhere, farming now in a way that nobody's going to need? Well, they're going to have to be wilderness managers. They're going to have to be subsidised, aren't they? To manage wilderness or wildlife. That's the only job to do out there. Because it's stupid to grow food there. It's just ridiculous. There's no point at all. There's no point at a certain size, but there's even less point when you've got out of scale size at a great distance. Doesn't make any sense. The only food worth eating is 0 food miles, 0 food time, 0 food guilt. No, why would you eat food that's not fresh, that comes from a long distance away, that carries with it guilt? And most of the time, very little nutrition. There's just really no point to it. It's kind of crazy that we don't think it's possible. We question, is it possible? Of course it's possible. There's no question about it at all. What we have to also realise is our industrial food supply has been completely simplified. Has anybody seen the video I made about the garden in Holyoke, Massachusetts? Cold climate, urban permaculture. Eric Toesmeyer, Jonathan Bates.
It's not the guys, they have the banana plant in front of their duplex?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a house, yeah, it's a house.
It's a house block. Yeah. In Holyoke, Massachusetts. That's in the Rust Belt of America. Holyoke, Massachusetts has ran on water power once. The canals are still there. Massachusetts gets 2 foot of snow every year. Where they are, it's quite a cold climate. They have 200 varieties of perennial vegetable in their garden. Not annuals, perennials. 200. They started off with 300. They came down to their favourite 200. 100 weren't as good. So they picked what they thought were the best 200. This is in a cold climate. It's quite easy to get to 400 varieties of fruit, vegetables and herbs anywhere on earth. It's not that hard. And remember, we haven't domesticated everything yet. You do realise that. We have not domesticated this planet yet. There's lots of food crops we still have to develop. The desert collection has never been done. Nobody's put all the desert species that are edible in one place. All the food crops of the world come from the 5 continents, except Australia. Australia's produced nothing.
Macadamias.
Just macadamias, and the Americans domesticated the macadamia in Hawaii. And Australia is the one continent that hasn't had an ice age, so it's more diverse than the other continents in species. It's the flattest, the oldest, the driest continent on Earth. It's never had an ice age. No continent has imported more foreign species, and it's the continent where humans have done more damage over more area in less time, with less people than anywhere on Earth. And we haven't domesticated any of those ones. Apart from others, there are plenty out there that haven't been domesticated yet. Plenty. But they don't fit the economic model. There's many crops that don't fit the economic model. They fit the permaculture model. Fine, no problem at all. And unless someone informs you of this, you just don't realise what you're missing out on. I mean, I would say, half of what we grow at Zaytuna Farm isn't something you buy in the supermarket?
Yeah. It's not more.
Because people, it's just not an economic viability, but it's fantastic food, highly nutritious.
And it's still hard to get, even for myself and for everyone, to get in the mindset of like, this is the food, this is what we've got. You gotta like rearrange your head about what you eat.
Yeah. But it's my favourite place to eat on this planet.
Yeah.
It's the place where I feel healthiest. It's the place where the food feels like it regenerates me. In every way. It's a lifeboat. It allows me to do what I do. Because you get back and you regenerate. The water, the animal products, the vegetables, the fruits, and everything's in season. Nothing's out of season unless it's preserved or processed or preserved. And this is how you would identify yourself as permaculture in society. You would have a fingerprint. You're in England, yeah? You would be identified by a person of your English landscape. Your apples, your pears, you know, your processed food of that landscape. You would be a person of southern India and the bioregion of southern India. It would include breadfruit, it would include jackfruit, it would include cooking banana, it would include cassava. None of those would be with Mini in England. Why would they be? Because it would be your fingerprint of Kerala and Kerala's fingerprint of you and your fingerprint of England and England's fingerprint of you. It would be your identity, your personality. You would be a person of that land. This is who you are. You know, you want to be connected? That's the only way. You can trade with bioregions that are near you that are slightly different. But, you know, you want to feel like you have an identity. It's not McDonald's. It's not Nike. It's not that homogenized culture that we've got in the fashion market. Now, it's how you process your fish into fish pate. How you know the skills of doing that. You know, how you process your animal products. How you produce your wool. How you produce your leather. How you produce all of that stuff. How you coppice your firewood. You don't have to do much there, but you've got to do a lot there, you know? That's how permaculture re-tribalizes us and brings us back into identity. And we totally appreciate that. There's obviously a craving for a belonging. People want to belong. They want to tribalize. They tattoo, they earring, they dreadlock, they do all these things to be part of something. It's the soil, it's where you live, it's the bioregion, it's your climate, it's your landscape profile, it's your water catchment, it's understanding your water. You know, that's how you are. I can see a very nice picture. It's probably not perfectly correct, but it's pretty nice. Yeah. And I think it would be actually nicer. I haven't got a good enough imagination to think far enough. As a permaculture consultant, you arrive in places internationally, you have to try and imagine what this place looked like before human influence. I remember arriving in Macedonia, thinking 4,000 years of permanent occupation, been invaded 5 different directions. Wow, this is complicated. Yeah, right, until I got to the Middle East. You know, 10,000 years in Jericho, 12,000 years in Damascus. You know, like, how do you think back 10,000 years? What was it like? Why does it look like this? Australia, we have to think back 200 years.
Even then, it's sometimes hard to go to Sydney and the western suburbs of Sydney, and it's like,
What did it look like?
What did it look like? You've got to reimagine. It was a huge ironbark for us.
I mean, the original stumps are rotting away, but they're on our farm, the old growth forest. Our farm was logged in 1898. Some of the old stumps are still there. That's the old growth forest. It was 10 years after white settlement in Sydney. An Aboriginal walked into Parramatta in Western Sydney, with a koala. No one ever seen a koala. In 10 years, nobody had seen a koala. You know what a koala bear is?
Yeah.
And they had translators at the time, Aboriginal translators by that time, 10 years. And they said, ask him, what's that? What's that thing he's carrying? And translation came back, it's slow moving meat in a tree.
Oh, yeah.
That's why they hadn't seen so many of them, right? So, what we have to get onto is concepts and themes of design, which is chapter 2.